Hi everyone, my name's Melinda Moyer. I'm a taxonomist for the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development in South Perth. So I'm one of the people that will see any specimens that you may send in. Today I'm going to be giving you a very brief overview of identification of fall armyworms so that you might be able to narrow down what you send in to us if you're going to send anything in. Here's a brief slide on the life cycle of the fall armyworm. If we start on the right-hand side at the eggs look like a white mass. They can take 4 days to hatch. They hatch into little larvae or caterpillars. There are 6 instars of caterpillars, basically 6 stages before they are able to grow into pupa. They can then, from a pupa, they go to an adult, which is at the top of your screen. This life cycle takes somewhere between 30 to 90 days, but the warmer it is, the cycle can go, and we can get an entire cycle being conducted within 30 days. If we have a look at each stage, see if we can, what we can identify about these in the field. The eggs are a pale yellow to white colour. They tend to be clustered. Sometimes you get just a few eggs, but more often you get, as in this bottom left-hand side photo, a cluster of about 100 eggs. They look as if, most of them look as if they're covered in a white layer of fluff, but it's actually the setae and scales from the mother moth that she's shed to protect the eggs. Sometimes you don't get the covering though, so you have to be a bit wary. Like on the right-hand side, there's not as much covering those freshly hatched larvae. Eggs are very difficult to tell in the field. There are a number of other species, particularly noctuids, that do a similar thing. Lay the eggs on foliage and have this clustering appearance. So we don't tend to try and identify the eggs in the field. Once the eggs have hatched into larvae, then we start to get a better understanding of the species that we've got. The first instar, however, having said that, many of the caterpillars look very similar to other pest noctuids that you'll see out in your fields. And the damage is very similar too. It's chewing damage. So it's very hard to be able to discern between species just based on damage. So as I said, there are 6 larval instars. The first little instar is about 2 millimeters long. They're very small. They tend to be greenish with a black head. However, having said that, the colour, there's a great variation in colour. The colour can change depending on the climate and also what they're eating. For example, if you have a look at the little larvae down in the bottom right-hand corner, they look green, probably because they're eating the green leaf. As they develop, the body colour changes and so does the head. They develop these very obvious black spots. They can also have white stripes. Let's have a look at those now. So here's a couple of more mature larvae. They're by about the larval stage number 4, we start to get these white stripes that become quite obvious on some specimens. Having said that, if you look to the right-hand side, the white stripes aren't so obvious on that specimen. From about 4 to 6, the last larval instage, they're about 2.5 to 3.5 centimeters in length, so they get quite large. We have quite an obvious upside down Y shape on the head. Now that tends to be there no matter what, so that's quite good. Having said that, again, we have other caterpillars that also have that Y shape. But another feature that not as many other caterpillars have is this thoracic shield that is the same colour as the head. Thoracic shield is like a saddle just behind the head. On other caterpillars, it tends to vary in colour and doesn't tend to be the same as the head. Another feature are these black spots on the abdominal segments, the dorsal or the upper abdominal segments that are in the shape of a trapezium. They are all along the top of the caterpillar, except on segment 9. On segment 9, it looks more, those 4 dots form more of a square. Okay, so if you notice that sort of arrangement on a caterpillar, then please report it. Pupa are very difficult to tell apart from other caterpillars, so we don't tend to try, except that we can take DNA from pupa and then be able to tell what species it is based on the DNA. Pupa, the caterpillars tend to pupate in the soil at a depth from 2 to 8 centimetres. It's a typical cocoon, with a loose cocoon tied together with particles of soil with their silk. It's oval to elongate in shape. It's about 2 to 3 centimetres in length. And as I said, very similar to other noctuids. So unless you really suspect that you've got fall armyworm, I wouldn't be trying to identify the pupa. Now the pupa turn into moths. The moths, on the other hand, are exactly what we'd like to see. Moths are about 32 to 40 millimetres across from wingtip to wingtip if you lay them out. They're kind of bland looking moths. They're brown to grey. The females particularly are pretty nondescript. They're a moderate sized moth, so you'll get some larger pest moths in your crops. These are a bit smaller than the usual pest moths. Males have a bit more of a distinct pattern, as you can see on the top right-hand corner. They've got a series of white blotches that I've circled in red in the bottom photo, one at the outer side of the forewing. The forewing is that top wing, the hind wing is the bottom white wing, and the second white spot on the forewing is about the centre of the forewing. The other things to note with the wings is the hind wing is pretty white with that dark line. Now that you can see that on other moths, so we don't really take that into much consideration. But the forewing, if you look along the edges where I've got the yellow arrow on the forewing, there's a line of little black, they look like little black dots, but if you look at them closely, they're like little hourglasses. You can even see them when the forewings are folded over the moth, when the moth is live, as in the top right-hand corner. Male moths are what we prefer because back in the lab, we dissect the genitalia out to really be able to tell that these are fall armyworm. Or we can use molecular markers to distinguish the moths. Typically, when we get the moths in the lab, they've lost much of their scales, so you won't see any of the patterning. So if you've tried to grab a moth with your hand, you'll find that all the scales on the wings start to fall off. They tend to lose their patterns then, but luckily we have other methods for telling the moths apart. If you think that you have found something very suspicious, then please report it to us. You can do this by downloading the My Pest Guide Reporter, which is an app. You can download it onto your phone and take a photo on your phone, submit the report to us, and if it's something suspicious, we'll tend to get back to you very quickly. Alternatively, you can call the Pest and Disease Information Service that we have in the department. The number's there, or you can email them. You can also email them pictures, and they are pretty quick at returning your emails. They can also direct you in how to submit a sample. If you do see something suspicious, please collect it because we may want it back in the labs to confirm if it is fall armyworm. You can collect it and then put it in the freezer. That's probably the best, and that stops the moths from flying around and removing all their scales from their wings. Is there any questions?
There's a question about the life cycle. From the time the egg is laid until the moth emerges and can lay eggs. Do you have any idea how long that is?
So that it really depends on temperature. So the warmer it is, the faster that will happen. So that can happen within 30 days. The moth tends to only be around for a week to 3 weeks. It's only a week if it's really quite warm, but then as it gets cooler, it the time that the moth is around is drawn out a bit further. So it depends on the temperature, really, of where you're located.
So, yeah, thank you, Melinda. I think what we'll do is move on with David.